What was the first time you ever met Jeremy?
When I met Jeremy, after 2 hours we started fighting. I started working for Lamborghini without knowing what I wanted to do. I learned how to drive driving Lamborghinis. We used to exchange cars.
Would you ever get in trouble for swapping the cars?
We used to stop a couple of kilometers away.
When you're pushing those cars to the limit, do you think, how has my life become this? You must have had a few scary moments.
We had a couple of tires blow up, 200 miles per hour. One day my boss comes to me and he says, we have to go to the main office. So I started thinking, Mamma mia, this is my last day at Lamborghini.
The question that I ask every guest that sits in the seat opposite me when we first start is, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am Valentino Balboni and I am Italian, born in Modena, where the most beautiful car are manufactured. And I feel today very happy and very proud to be part of those guys, you know. I started working for Lamborghini without knowing what I was doing and what I wanted to do, because practically I was looking for a job, and for some very lucky circumstances, I ended up filling up an employment form at Automobili Lamborghini. And after a week, I was called for an interview with the chief responsible of Lamborghini, human research office, today is called, and this was a man, an executive, who was in charge for everything, organizing the company, organizing the production. And so I had a meeting with this man, with this executive, and while talking to him, asking me what I was doing, what I could do, what I wanted to do, suddenly the door of the office opens and a guy comes in like a devil, so excited, so nervous, smoking a cigarette, with the hair, he was really very, very excited. And he started yelling to his executive, to his manager, don't waste time talking to this guy, put him to work, don't waste time. And then this man get out of the office, slammed the door, and the man told me, you just met Ferruccio Lamborghini. Imagine what is going to happen to you if you don't do what he wants you to do. So after 3 hours on the company, the first morning I was so lucky and blessed to meet Ferruccio Lamborghini in person without knowing that I was meeting him.
And how long ago was that? Do you remember what year that was in? Because I've watched the famous film about Lamborghini and about Ferruccio and the Ferrari versus Lamborghini that ensued over all of those years. So when was that? Can you just, what year roughly?
This was April 21st, 1968.
Wow.
Which was my first day at Lamborghini Automobili, employed as an apprentice mechanic.
And what sort of vehicles were they making at that time? Because Lamborghini started out making tractors.
Well, Lamborghini became a very wealthy industrial manufacturing tractors. And then, for some reason which may be interesting to tell, he became a car manufacturer. But Ferruccio Lamborghini, on those days, on those times, he had Lamborghini tractors. He founded Lamborghini tractors. He founded Lamborghini Aerodinamica. He founded Lamborghini heating system and burners, okay? Because on those days was an actual necessity, an actual product. And then he became a car industrial, a car manufacturer, because he always told the story about him meeting Enzo Ferrari. And, the two guys started to complaining because Ferruccio Lamborghini found out that the clutch fitted on his Ferrari was the same clutch fitted on a small Lamborghini tractor, because this part was a commercial part, was not a specific part. Was a part that was fitting Maserati, Lamborghini, and also the Lamborghini tractors. So Ferruccio Lamborghini, who burned the clutch many times on his Ferrari and paid a lot of money to replace the clutch, he decided to have the clutch replaced at the tractor company with his mechanics. And those guys, they told him, look here, this clutch is the same as our tractor clutch. And then Ferruccio Lamborghini started yelling and throwing tools away because he wasn't happy to have paid so much money. And then to him was costing one, So one day when he met Enzo Ferrari in Verona at the agricultural fair, the two guys started talking, and Ferruccio Lamborghini told him, you built your beautiful cars with my tractor parts, like two kids. And Enzo Ferrari told him, you are a farmer, you are a tractor driver. You shouldn't complain driving my cars. And this fight started. And Ferruccio Lamborghini always said, I will show you how to make a real sport car and reliable sport car and so on. And this is how the story started.
If you're listening to this episode and have your own business and need help with your digital marketing services, then I'm here to help. Just drop me a message, as I own Tweak Marketing, a leading agency specialising in technology, healthcare, automotive and many more sectors. We built websites from small individual one-man bands all the way up to huge global companies. We're here to help you take steps forward in your digital marketing. Get in touch with me via the link in the description and we'll hop on a call and see how we can help you. And when you joined that company right at the very beginning and you applied for that job, did you ever think that you were going to be one of the most legendary names inside Lamborghini and have one of their future cars named after you?
Absolutely not at all. Absolutely not. I never thought today, after 50 years or more, to be here talking about Lamborghini and representing what Lamborghini is. I never thought in my life,
Well, it's funny because many people that I sit and talk to opposite me in the van, there'll be some memory or something that I have that could go back even years in my life to when I first heard that thing or that name or saw that person. And with you, it was when Richard Hammond drove the Gallardo Balboni. It was black, it had a manual transmission, it was rear wheel drive, and it was named after the legendary Lamborghini test driver that had retired at that point of time.
Yeah.
But how did you go from being in the factory and being in Lamborghini and walking in and applying for a job to being a test driver for Lamborghini?
This is another very, very funny story, because first of all, when I started in 68, I had no driving license. I could drive a car, but I had no driving license because my family was, let's say, a good, nice family, but we had no money to go to school for driving license. Practically, I got my driving license when I was army, because it was free of charge. And on those days, you could have a driving license on the army, during the army, and then when back home you could convert the driving license to civil, to normal driving license. And this was happening. Practically, I learned how to drive cars, driving Lamborghinis around the two buildings existing on those days at the company. And since I wasn't supposed to do that, always my bosses was calling me, Valentino, you shouldn't drive all day around the building because you can't do it. It's not your job. Don't do it. Stop doing, because sooner or later Lamborghini will fire you. So I wasn't doing that for a day or two, but the third or fourth day I was doing again. So finally, one day my boss comes to me while I was working on a Miura, reassembling the car after an accident. The owner had an accident. I was reassembling the car after being repaired. So he comes to me and he says, Valentino, we have to go upstairs to the main office, to the president office. So I started thinking, Mamma mia, this is my last day at Lamborghini. This is the day they fired me. So, on the way from my department to the main office of the president, I was asking my boss, what's happened? What happened? I was afraid. And he didn't say a word to me. So we go upstairs to the general director office, of course. And, I opened the door. And inside the office was Ferruccio Lamborghini, the general director, production director, all the most important executive on those days. And also, especially was Bob Wallace, which was the main test driver at Lamborghini, the only test driver at Lamborghini on those days. So the general director starts telling me, now, since you keep driving all day around the building, which you shouldn't do, the company is now growing. We need to train a young test driver. So we decided to check on you if you have the attitude to become a test driver. And, Bob Wallace took me under his care for a year. And after a year, let's say I was named officially Lamborghini test driver. After a year of training with this special man, very good man, highly specialized test driver, he gave me the first, let's say, basis to work, the first point to work and learn how to develop these feelings, these situations, these reactions, from the car to learn.
What did it feel like coming out of that meeting?
I was feeling, am I really, was that real? Was that a dream? Am I really enjoying this? Am I really experiencing this? I didn't really...
What did your mother say to it? What did she say, like when you go home?
When I went home, I said to my parents, well, maybe I am improving my job. I'm going now to let's say learn a different job and blah blah blah, and everybody was happy. I have to say my dad and my mom wasn't really exactly knowing what I was doing for Lamborghini. I was a mechanic. I went to school for a mechanic, but I never thought to become a test driver this way.
So they saw you doing laps of the buildings constantly because you love the cars.
Which
is why, because you're a massive fan of the Miura, aren't you? Your favourite was the Miura. So were you driving Miuras like this constantly around the building?
Let's say constantly. I wouldn't say constantly, but the work. One of the work the apprentice has to do was to push the car outside the building in the morning and push the car back on the evening, because there was no room enough to work on the department for many cars. But instead of pushing the car outside, I was pushing the car outside the building, outside the door. But then, instead of parking the car in front of the door or in front of the building, I was driving 2 or 3 times around the buildings. And all the employees in front of the office, you imagine you drive with a Miura in front of an office where the window is open because no air conditioning on those days. So the dust gets inside the office, the smell, and everybody was complaining. And almost every day I was, getting from my boss, don't do that, stop it. So I became a test driver this way.
Do you think someone had spotted you out of their window and gone, him? Like, do you think someone in an office saw you and went, him, when you were driving round?
Of course. And complaining to my boss, because my boss was coming to me and said, don't do that. I mean, stop doing that. Because
But one of them thought, he might make the right guy.
Well, this is what came out after that meeting.
So, Bob, you said taught you a lot of all those initial skills to be able to drive a car and that feel and feeling. I remember when I was first learnt how to drive like performance cars on the road, they would say here, imagine a piece of string between the steering wheel and the throttle pedal. So like when you come back, it feels like when you're coming out of a corner, you can put the power on and you get more string. Was that similar things, similar principles that we're telling you to do?
Let's say not as much, on details, but just getting the feeling of the cars. For us was more getting the feeling, the reaction of the car, and learn learn how the car react and transfer this to the engineer for the necessary repair or updates, or changes.
So what do you remember the first Lamborghini that you feel like you really got to know, you really understood the car, you spanked it on track? Like, was that getting towards the Countach, or was that a few models before that?
Let's say the first.
Spada.
Yeah. Let's say the first easiest car was a Miura. I mean, to learn. For me, the easiest car was a Miura, because the way it was built, the chassis, the suspension was a very good compromise, and the car. It was easy to feel the reaction of the car and make an experience on that. Then moving to the other models, the Countach was much more complicated to develop a Countach, to test a Countach, because of the technology applied to that car on those specific days was quite different. So, every day, day by day, you build and you improve your sensibility, your attitudes. You have to see without your eyes, and you have to feel without your ears. I mean, it's this kind of getting into the car. The car has so many components, so many different. Can give so many different sensations. You have to pick up the right sensation, the right reaction of the car, and build your experience on that, your feelings, your sensibility.
Was most of your testing done on the road or on the track?
On the road.
All of it?
On the road, because on those days, and still today, even on a modern car, every production car is tested on the road, because this is where the customer will drive and enjoy the car. So we have to make exactly the same condition of the life of the car. The prototypes are tested. I mean, on those days, the prototypes tested also on the road. Today you have proving grounds. Today is a completely different way of developing a car. But on my times, the car was mainly developed on the public road. But considering country roads, no traffic, free, speed limits, whatever, was considered in a different way.
Yeah, the police would go when you come by. But so, if I went to Modena now and I went and sat outside Ristorante Montana and I sat there for an hour or two, it's likely that I would see a Ferrari or a Lamborghini come by, but it would probably be in full white camouflage. It would be just the lights showing on the side and the bars. I'm guessing 50 years ago, there was none of that. You would just spank the car and get out. Was there people from Ferrari out spying to see what your new car was on the road? Did you try and camouflage them back then?
Let's say one thing, and I hope to answer your question. We are all friends on those days, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati, De Tomaso, because all those companies within 10 miles, very close. And we used to test the cars more or less on the same roads. So it was a spot, it was a kind of place on these roads where we used to stop, and the first one getting to that spot was waiting, because within 10-15 minutes another test driver was going through, was driving by. So at a certain point we had 4-5 exotic cars standing on the same place, and each one of us was talking about our own car, friends, talking about friends. And we became good friends, Lamborghini test driver, Maserati, Ferrari test driver also. And, all good friends. But at the time, we sit on a car and going back, nobody wanted to be second. So, it was kind of friendly race on roads, which was possible on those days because country roads, I said, no traffic, different. And also, we used to exchange cars sometimes. To exchange cars because, especially when we started to produce the Countach, it was so much attention for that car, media, journalists, there was so much attention, and so was my colleague. Everybody was curious to feel and drive the Countach even for a short time, and this was was very nice.
Why was the Countach so important to Lamborghini? Because it's just one that everybody knows. It's like the Ferrari Enzo. Like, everybody knows it. You can look at one. It's the same thing with a Countach. Like, was that a big launch for Lamborghini? Was that a big thing for the brand compared to the ones that had come before?
Well, the Countach opened a new era on an exotic car. Today they are called exotic car. On those days we used to call Lamborghini. I mean, the design of the car, the scissor door, the famous scissor door, the whole style of the car. With the Countach, we went from the smooth, friendly lines of a sport car to the edges everywhere.
That's what people think of with Lamborghini, but people think of this like sharp lines, edges, and all the rest of it, which is what you get on Countach.
Yeah.
But actually, back in the day,
See?
It was more, dare I say it, Ferrari, which is soft lines and curves.
Lamborghini, Ferruccio Lamborghini was the first one who wanted to really make a big difference from what it was until today and what will be tomorrow. And this is how the Countach came out. Because, cooperating with Marcello Gandini, a genius on that, together they've been able to put on the road a Countach. And when I saw the Countach the first time, the model, I said, we will never be able to go on the road with this car, because this car is not a car. This car is something else coming from somewhere in a world, But nobody of us thought that one day it was possible to put this car on production and drive the car, because it was so much different from any other car,
Had you, because you said that you and your friends would swap cars in the lay-by down the road, do you remember the first time you drove a Ferrari?
Of course, yes.
Do you know which one it was?
Well, on those days, it was a Daytona, for example.
So front engine, like
Front
the Miura.
engine, yeah.
How did that make you feel? Because if you've grown up not expecting to become the test driver of Lamborghini, and then you've learnt in Lamborghini, and all you kind of know is Lamborghini, and if you've got no traction control, no ABS, no helpful systems, was it really different hopping in a Ferrari or a Maserati?
Well, let's say, I don't want to say similar, but the guidelines more or less the same, because a Daytona front engine behaves more or less as a Spada or a Yarama or a Islero on those days. So let's say the guidelines are more or less the same, and then the differences are on the tuning, different tunings, different geometry on the suspension, which makes the car different. But let's say power, transmission, feelings are more or less the same,
More similar than you expected?
No, but the differences are, for us, understandable. I mean, easy to identify, and they are acceptable. They match with that specific car or model.
Would you and your friends ever get in trouble for swapping the cars? Because in the moment, it's just you, your pal, the cars, the Modena, the roads, blue skies, and you're in a lay-by. But when you drive 5 minutes down the road, you've got these enormous buildings, Ferrari SPA, Scuderia Ferrari, race team, Lamborghini. I've been to both factories. Behind the scenes, those are big companies and they want to get their cars right. Would you ever get in trouble for swapping the cars?
We knew how to do it without provoking any bad reactions.
So no one ever saw?
No. Let's say, we used to stop a couple of miles or kilometers away. After 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes drive, and then each one was picking up his car and going back to his own company.
From when you started driving cars to maybe the Countach, maybe one of the models like the Murcielago, something more updated when electronical systems were coming onto cars, what was something that, like a part or a piece that's a part of all the cars now, that when that came into production, it completely changed the game? Like anti-lock brakes, for example, or steering. Was there like something that you thought was revolutionary when it came onto the cars for the first time?
When we started developing the ABS, what is this really working? Is this really helping? Every time we used to develop something modern, something actual, it was something unbelievable. I remember when I was testing the first cars with bigger brakes and ABS. This was 98 when we started developing on a Diablo this new system. I was feeling so bad, I wasn't familiar, and this ABS was always coming on before I was feeling it was necessary to come on. I don't know. ABS today is extremely sophisticated, useful, and as many other electronic devices, safety devices today. I agree on those because it's safety. It makes life behind the wheel more easy for a customer, for a guy that he wants to enjoy his car without going to the limit every day. But every time we used to develop something new, electronic, cage-electronic, sequential electronic, transmission sequential. It was something interesting, but a little bit going at the beginning against my mentality, my attitudes, my experiences,
Since what was it like the first time? Like, we take stuff for granted in cars, and I've been lucky enough to own several Lamborghinis, and they've all got these big carbon fibre paddles on them. And I remember when I was a kid looking at Murcielagos with the great big paddles behind the transmission, and then Gallardo, and then Hurricane came along, and all these models with the great big paddles, Aventador. But for you, when you saw a great big paddle behind the steering wheel for the first time, it must have felt alien, right?
I didn't like that at all, I thought it was unusual. so big thing, almost a quarter or half of the diameter of the steering wheel. I said, man, this is will be easy to touch without really need it. So, it's always first impression, first feeling. Normally they have to be considerate, but not taking in real serious consideration, because after short you get used to it. And even if I fighted many times with the engineer about certain things, after sometimes I started thinking, Jesus, much better this way than my way, So, okay, and it's always good to learn and, of course, give your impressions, but always considering that engineers knows what they do normally.
When was it that you started to test cars on track and go to the track? Or has that never been something that Lamborghini's been crazy about? Because there's track limited models of the Lamborghini now. My Performante set the lap record around the Nürburgring at the time, 6:57, I think it was.
Yeah.
So they clearly care about the track in this day and age. Like, when did that start creeping into like the philosophy of Lamborghini? Because my friends in their unit in Los Angeles at the Driven Collection have a Murcielago GT1 in grey, like a race car.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing's wild. Surely you got to grips with some of them.
See, as we said, let's divide Lamborghini into eras. The first one related to vintage car until the Countach. Okay, then when the Diablo came after the Countach, we already changed our, let's say, philosophy in terms of testing. We developed the Diablo on a proving ground, which is 90% of the whole development was done on the proving ground, which is not a racetrack, but is a specific proving ground.
Because Ferrari has Fiorano. Was there somewhere that you would use a lot?
Well, let's say one thing to be more accurate. The racetrack in Fiorano is not used to test the production car, first of all, unless some special event, customer events, but normally the racetrack is devoted to the Formula One development and so on. Everybody use a proving ground, which is in south of Italy, which is very well known, used from the biggest car manufacturer in the world. Doesn't matter exotic or non-exotic, Mercedes, BMW, everybody uses Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari. Because
the one with the big banked
this
corner that we
is
see on top. Yeah.
which is a proving ground, and there you can make every condition you want to do it. Is the best of the best. You have every possibility to simulate whatever you want to do it. And this is how we started after the Countach. The Countach has been developed 90% on the public roads, on the roads. The Diablo has been developed 95% on the proving ground. And then I always wanted to make the last final touch on the public road, because this is where the customer has to drive the car, and this is where the car has to have the best feelings, reactions.
When you're pushing those cars to the limit, you must have had a few scary moments over the years. Do you remember your first?
Well, we had many, let's say, this kind of experiences. Partly was expected, partly was not expected. Yes, blowing tires, for example, or developing tires with Pirelli. It happened a few times.
Do you ever have any bad ones? Like,
well, when you develop a tire, it's one of the most important, test development, because you have to find out if the tire really keeps on at a certain speed, and for how much and for how long. So we went to the proving ground with the Murcielago and with the Diablo, with the Aventador, with the Huracan, modern cars. They all went through this test. But especially when Pirelli developed special tires for the Diablo, high-performance tires, we had to work months and months with Pirelli cooperating to have, let's say, the best result and the best compounds. And well, we had a couple of tires blow up 200 miles per hour. Or
So.
300.
Were you in the car
Yes,
when a
yeah.
tyre blew up at 200
Oh,
mile an
yes,
hour?
yes.
How are you still here?
Because first of all you have to be lucky, and then what can I say? You are on a safe environment, okay? But still you have to be lucky.
Was there airbags in that car?
No. Not on our prototypes.
Have you been into hospital a few times?
No, thanks God, never in my life, which is also something that has to be outlined, Never in my life, never had some serious injury or caused some serious injury. No, thanks God, nothing happened, never.
Even whilst doing all of that and pushing those cars to the limit, because surely you'd push and push and push and push.
Yeah. Today I think, how could it been possible to do what I did so many years ago on a public road, I don't know, is inconscience or whatever it is, but I have to say I was very, very lucky. Nothing happened serious,
You told me about the time you first met Ferruccio Lamborghini on your first day, no matter minutes into your interview. Do you remember the last time you met him?
Well, I remember the last times I met him, because he was used, after he sold the company and after many years, he was used to come to visit Lamborghini sometime with his secretary, with his German secretary. And at those time he had already his vineyard company built in south of Italy, in Umbria, Trasimeno Lake and so on. Because when he sold Lamborghini, he decided to have his own museum built in Trasimeno Lake, and also he decided to have his vineyard and so on. And so he was used to come to Bologna and then visiting Lamborghini. So over the years, when the people changed, the executive owners of Lamborghini, he was coming to the front door and asking, can you call Valentino, please? So the man at the security, sometime he didn't know who he was, because time goes by. And Ferruccio Lamborghini was used to come to me in a service department where he was working and testing, and he was asking me to keep for him damaged parts, pieces of engines which we replaced, because he wanted to build his own museum. And so I was keeping faulty parts for him to start to put on his museum. And this was the last time I saw him.
What was that like, finding out that someone that you knew and that had also helped give you the opportunity of a lifetime to drive these cars? Was that a sad day when you found out that he'd passed?
Well, of course, we knew each other, and we always stay in touch with him, especially me, because I was lucky that he was always considering me, let's say, not a friend, of course, but somebody loyal to him. And I was taking him to the meetings with the Lamborghini clubs, during his visit. We going together to the restaurant with the club, so I had the opportunity to meet him also, let's say, outside the business, outside the company, which was very helpful to me, because through him I met many Lamborghini customer members, club members, and so we had good times.
Do you remember, we're currently at Petrolheadonism Underground, a car show hosted by Petrolheadonism at Wembley in London, and a rather famous chap with a big security entourage has been walking around in Richard Hammond.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first time that you went and did something with Top Gear and met the boys?
Oh yes, I remember. Many times I did something with Top Gear and with those guys, Well, we had a good experience. It was nice to meet Jeremy was nice to meet Richard and the other guy, which I don't remember.
James.
Yeah, James.
Do you remember Ben Collins?
No.
The Stig?
Sting. Well. I remember. I remember him. Yes. I remember him. But no. I met those guys and in a few different occasions. During shooting of these videos, and it was nice. Sometimes not so pleasant, but was nice because Jeremy, is not an easy an easy man to work with.
What was the first time you ever met Jeremy?
Oh, when I met Jeremy, well, let's say after 2 hours we started fighting. because he was testing the Diablo SE, the special edition of Diablo, which was our prototype. And I remember on the hills around Modena, he had to go drive by in front of a camera for a few times. And that road was a small road. The car had no power steering, and it was difficult to maneuver, reverse, front. So he was sweating, he was very hot, he was so upset. So at the end of the shooting, he stops in front of the camera and he starts describing the car as a as a big, heavy truck, 7,000 riffs, vibrations. He was really talking about the car very bad. So I jumped in front of a camera and I said to him, "Hey, Jeremy, please don't say this thing because, we need to promote this car. This car is a prototype, has no power steering, is okay, but don't be so rude with the car. And don't tell me what I have to do." And so we started really talking. Yeah, but
Because Jeremy is known for throwing
I didn't go to the point, but very close, very close. But after he calmed down and he did a nice report as he normally does, he was always friendly with us, and then every time we meet somewhere, it's always he remembers always the event we had on those days.
Because I remember the reason I thought that I knew what testing facility you were talking about was one of the first Top Gear specials I watched was the McLaren MP4 12C, the Lamborghini Aventador, and I can't remember, I think it was the Noble M600, and they took on that giant banked circuit. That was at the testing facility you used.
Nardo, yes.
Nardo, that's
proving
it.
Ground, yeah.
Was you on those days?
No, not with the Aventador. I ended up doing this with Murcielago. Yeah, with the Murcielago.
Was the Murcielago the last car that you, like the last V12 Lamborghini car that you fully worked on?
The beginning of the Aventador. And then I was close to retire. And so Lamborghini Research and Development didn't want to involve me more than the strict necessary, because of retiring and so confidentiality and so on.
Well, we just spoke about the Top Gear boys and obviously relationship with Jeremy, but Hammond that's been walking around behind us, it was him that I saw drive your edition of the Lamborghini Gallardo, the Balboni, for the first time on Top Gear. If I remember, because like many people that will be listening and watching to this, we remember these episodes so vividly, car guys. Like, they were so special to us. I remember, I think it was a bit of a moody day. He was driving it on and there was the chrome shifter of the manual shifter in that car, and it was rear wheel drive, and he spoke about how most Lamborghinis are 4-wheel drive, but you wanted the power to the rear. You told me earlier, so you started working on that car and they called you back, was it the last car, without you knowing it was going to be named after you?
Correct, yes. This was, let's say, the last unexpected, beautiful surprise, reward of my life, with Lamborghini, because one day the technical director called me and he said to me, "Liz, look here downstairs, we have a Gallardo, and on this Gallardo we took the front wheel because we want you now you have 6 months time to tune the car on two-wheel only.
Rear wheel drive.
Yeah, rear-wheel drive, yes. So I said to the engineer, wow, Jesus, you're thinking to go back to the two-wheel drive after so many years of four-wheel drive,
Was
you know?
was Countach rear or was that full?
No, Countach was rear-wheel drive, yeah. But, after the Countach, the first Diablo 91, 92 was two-wheel drive, but then Diablo VT was four-wheel drive, and after that, 93, 94, almost every Lamborghini was four-wheel drive, except the Diablo SV, the Diablo SA, a few models, but mainly 80% of the production was four-wheel drive. When the Gallardo came, Huracan, and so on. So practically with the Gallardo, they told me, now you have 6 months time to develop and tune the car on two-wheel drive. Okay, so I did it, and after finished the development project, it was a general meeting with the biggest executive of the company, and this was, I tell you, was Sant'Agata Day. In Italian we have a sanct protecting the towns. So Sant'Agata is February 5 is the holiday in Sant'Agata, where because the sanct is protecting the village. It's okay. So this was the day of a meeting, and then we go to this office, and they start telling me, the president start telling me, okay, now that you finished the project of Gallardo, we want to tell you that we want to make a limited edition of the Gallardo with your name. I said, wow, why? Because you are here today with a modern Lamborghini, and you have been at the beginning of the Lamborghini history. So we want to use your name to as a link between the Lamborghini of those, with keeping the roots of Lamborghini of those days and Lamborghini modern. And now, I said, I understand why I did 6 months work to tune a Gallardo on two-wheel drive, and this is the result,
Did you love that car?
I love that car very much, and also, many positive comments of the customer. So after that, after the Gallardo, Valentino Balboni, the Huracan and the Gallardo, first the Gallardo and then the Huracan became option 2 or four-wheel drive. So, it was kind of a pleasant surprise that the two-wheel drive was so well accepted.
Did you watch the review of Hammond driving that car that I speak about?
Yes, of course.
What was that like before you saw to the end? Were you...
Well, I trust those guys. I know that they are very, very, let's say, professional, first of all, and they know how to handle everything.
Which one is the best driver?
Each one is his own specification. I think Richard is the most, let's say, talented, I would say,
He pushes it right to the limit.
Yeah. Because he is going maybe more close to the limit than the other.
I have a friend called Matt that does the same, and they find themselves in the ditch sometimes.
I did the same, doing the same thing with the Murcielago and Jeremy. It's the same thing, I ended up on the ditch somewhere here in UK.
So you and Jeremy ended up in the ditch in a Lamborghini Murcielago?
With a Murcielago, but just a small, a little bit.
Just an incident.
Only a little, but no damage.
Was that in the UK?
Yes. Was here where they used to test. I don't remember the name of the place, but was here.
Oh, Toby, I know where he's on about. Millbrook Proving Ground.
Millbrook is a different story because I had so much fun driving in Millbrook. So much fun. This was something that I will never forget.
The Alpine Road.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
So for those that don't know, what we're talking about is Millbrook Proving Ground, and it actually became famous because of James Bond and Aston Martin a little bit. If you were like if you were in the know, you'd know about it. But at the test facility, which many YouTube videos, auto car reviews and Evo, they've all been there and done stuff with cars, but it's used for the manufacturers to test cars out. And they've got a big oval circuit that you can take your hands off the wheel at 100 mile an hour and the car will still keep going round. They've got the normal acceleration, drag racing, straight line stuff. They've got the skid pans, but they've got the Alpine Road, which was designed to test a car to the limit. And there is some corners on there, and I've driven it in a Cayman, like just a great car to drive on. But that road became famous because it's where they flipped the DBS in the Bond film.
Okay.
And as you come down off one of the Alpine cresses, there's a piece of tarmac that's been redone at the bottom, and you can see it. It looks like it's been fixed. And that's where the explosives were that flipped
to flip the car.
The Bond car. But one hell of a track.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had so beautiful experience, because I think every year the dealer in UK, the importer, was organizing events, taking customer to the place, and I was driving like a devil, a Gallardo, Murcielago. Oh, beautiful time, beautiful. I can't forget jumping over the bridge. Is a bridge at a certain point, and then you can jump, really put the car on the air, and then landing, and immediately is a right, which is unbelievable. It was a lot of fun.
Was there any pinch yourself moments then that you thought back to the kid that your parents could barely afford that driving license, and you had that opportunity in the office to become the Lamborghini test driver? When you're enjoying yourself that much and you're in the air in a merchant lager, do you think, how has my life become this?
Good question, it still is something that I never really thought about that, because day by day, building experience without losing passion, love, devotion to my work and to Lamborghini. It became something instinctive, something naturale, we say.
But you remember the guy that first sat in that office, the guy that first saw Ferruccio Lamborghini. Does you find it strange when people refer to you as a legend and all these big words, when you're like, you've lived, you're like, wow, like, do you feel like, are you sure, guy? Do you know what I mean?
I think I understand, I am honored. I am how can I say, proud that the people, customer, friends, thinks to me about being this one. But I really feel one of the luckiest of my friends, being here to talk to you, being here to represent Lamborghini, to talk about Lamborghini. I am no longer officially involved with Lamborghini today, but being remembered as one of those guys makes me full of proud, happy.
I'm gonna get the name of the film right. Toby, what was it called?
Lamborghini. I think it's the man.
The film about Lamborghini.
Yeah,
The film about
the movie,
Ferruccio,
yeah.
You watch it?
Should I? You want me to be honest? Yes. No, sorry, I didn't watch it. No.
Why?
Because after the first comment on that movie, I didn't feel attracted to see that movie.
Do you think it would make you angry if it was wrong?
Yes, I'm very angry
And
about that.
Is that the fear that you have with watching it?
Correct.
So you don't think you will ever watch it?
I will never watch that movie. I'm sorry to say that, but this is what I think.
Are you ever... We've just witnessed Lewis Hamilton change from Mercedes. We thought that he was going to end up at Mercedes as a representative, as someone that was there forever. Like people like Rosberg are so sort of associated with Mercedes, and these
I agree.
Ricciardo with Red Bull has gone back. with there, and suddenly we see Hamilton wearing red. When you're working in Modena and Ferrari's just down the road, was there ever a time that you thought, I might go and try one of these other car brands out and try their cars after 20 years, 30 years? Or was it always Lamborghini?
Let's say the interest, the wish to drive a Ferrari or a Bugatti or a Maserati or a Koenigsegg or a Pagani is always there. I mean, it's natural. It's part of me. It's still part of my instinct to drive cool competitors' cars, which are not competitors' cars, but we are friends. Competitors car, I mean, I like to drive different models, I like it.
Would you like to drive this? And what is on the screen there is, you told me outside the van, you told me inside the van, that your favourite Lamborghini is the Countach. It's the one that you think of, you remember the stories driving it. What does it make you feel when the brand, these are called a homologation in the UK, I don't know if they use the same word, but they put the name on a car from the past. How does that make you feel?
Let's say one aspect may be positive, because the name came out again constantly and insistently.
But you're Italian, you're passionate, you care. You were the guy that helped make that car what it was.
I wouldn't have done that one. I would have avoided.
You wouldn't have done it again?
No, not me.
So does it make you sad being so passionate about the brand, or?
Not sad, but I think an icon is an icon, and he has to stay an icon, This, it's okay, it's a beautiful car, fantastic, the name, but for me the Countach is the previous one.
Did you ever drive the Sesto Elemento?
Not really, only around the company, because it was not legal for public use, even if you put proper plate number,
And you like to test them on the road?
This came after my time,
Was there ever one that got away from another brand? You list off all the amazing car brands in and around Modena. Pagani?
Tell me again.
Would you like to drive Pagani? Have you driven Pagani?
Sure, of course, yeah. Pagani, first of all, is a good friend since long time. Pagani started his activity with Lamborghini, with us at the company. He founded first the fiberglass department, which became after carbon fiber, Horacio is an excellent guy, a technician, first a friend, and then he decided to have his own car because this is Horacio Pagani.
Does he remind you in any way of Ferruccio?
Let's say yes. Yeah, I would say yes, because he still has the mentality of the exclusivity, to be exclusive, and his way is exclusive, as he was Ferruccio Lamborghini.
Car lovers like me are struggling to accept the change going on in a lot of modern cars now. If I could do what you did with the Gallardo, I'm lucky enough to own a Hurricane Performante, and I could just get the engineering department to tweak several things with the car. I'd put hydraulic steering back on it. I'd get rid of the electric rack. I'd put a button in it to make the suspension softer. They've done that on the updated models, but not on what I had. There'd just be these little tweaks I could make, because I've been lucky enough to drive more and more cars. As you drive more and more cars, you learn those little bits that you would love to tweak about them. Do you think that modern cars are becoming too far gone? You're not interested in them because you went through a time where cars had technology coming onto them, anti-lock brakes, ABS, traction control. And back then you must have been thinking, do we really need this? My point is, as someone that's watching all these new cars come out and going, I prefer 2008 to 2015. Do you live in hope, or do you think it's getting worse?
we have to. I consider one thing, the relation between the power of those days and the and the technique we had available on those days compared to the one of today. We need those equipment, we need those new, let's say, the mentality of the owner of an exotic car today is changed, My times was a customer who wanted to challenge with the car. He wanted to enjoy driving the car. He wanted to suffer driving the car. Today, a modern customer is a completely different. He has a different culture, different mentality. He wants to go fast. He wants to be safe. Because it's easier. Because it's easier life, A beautiful car, a beautiful image car. Personally, I think I still prefer the old way, but I have a lot of respect for the new way, because this is what it is today. So many conditions are changed. Traffic, power, many cars on the road, much more risk of driving cars today than 30, 40, 50 years ago. I don't know which is the best, Difficult to say. I love to drive an Aventador. I love to drive a Revuelto, but the power, it's not making me feeling I can control, because I have some experience, but I think that putting this kind of power on everybody's disposal availability, it may be dangerous.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up our time in the van. Valentino, thank you so much for giving me your time at Petrolhedonism today. And there's so many things in that conversation, from swapping the cars with your friends down the road to crashing at 200 miles an hour to almost punching Clarkson. So I can't believe what I've heard, and it was lovely meeting you.
My pleasure.
And
thank you very much for
sir.
this opportunity
Cheers.
you gave me. I'm sorry, maybe I can't even, I can't express exactly what I would love to do, but as I said, never thought to be here after so many years to talk. And when I say something, when I do something, I always do everything I can to remember my friends, my colleagues of those days, which unfortunately for a reason or another one, they cannot keep on doing what I'm doing for Lamborghini, because I could retire, I could close the doors, I could do whatever I want, but the main thing I want to do is to keep on doing what I'm doing for myself and for Lamborghini, especially for Lamborghini, I would say.